In the current video, I'm going to go deep into the weeds here, and you may wonder why. I don't know if I'll have enough time to get to why. But anyway, I'm dealing with the identity of this police officer here as seen in the Hughes film. I don't think you can see him in every version of the Hughes film because in some of the versions I've seen online, it doesn't go far enough over to the left to see him. But in this version, it has the sprocket holes. It certainly goes far enough, and there he is, a radio patrolman who doesn't move a muscle in the Hughes film. Perhaps the same one running in a Bond photo. You can tell he's a radio patrolman because he's wearing the dark blue hat. The traffic division cops wear a white hat. So probably the patch on his shoulder there probably signifies that too, though I'm not sure about that because not all the photos are in color, so I can't be sure what the traffic cops are wearing there. But anyway, I'm interested in who he is. And this same officer, apparently the same officer because he's standing in the same place, can be seen in this Skaggs photo. And unfortunately, you can't see very much of him. You can't identify him through this photograph. The best image of his face is in the Hughes frame I just showed before. And but you can see it's a patrolman once again. He's got the dark hat and the green shoulder patch. And when considering the timing and the position of people visible in the photography, and the fact that only one patrolman is visible in the photography prior to the shooting, I conclude that this must be the same officer here in the Bond photo running towards Elm Street as was standing by the side of the road in the Hughes film at Houston and Maine. This must be the same officer here running towards the scene. And in this frame from the couch film showing the south side of Elm Street with Apron Man in the foreground, the cop I have circled here must be that same cop. There was a different cop, an Officer Smith, the one who draws his gun that you can see in the films. That's not this guy. That cop is further east than this. This is the same cop that was running in the Bond film. So these are the only images I know of to be this police officer. Later on, of course, when more policemen arrive, there's lots of patrolmen around. But prior to the shooting, this is the only patrolman who can be identified as such in the photography. Oh, I forgot about this one. He is also visible in the Dorman film for a very short period of time. And you wouldn't even know for sure that's a cop if you didn't know he was already there. But there he is. And this graphic is composed from a couple of different documents. The top there is the assignment sheet for the presidential visit, and there are 3 police officers assigned to Maine and Houston. Now there's the sergeants around, and they're not assigned to an intersection specifically. These are just the low-level guys that are assigned to the intersection, and they're listed as B.J. Fox, C.E. Lewis, and W.H. Denham. And all of them appear in the Bachelor exhibit number 5002, which is the November roster for the police department, names every officer on the police department, and all 3 of them appear in that document as being in the traffic division. And all of the officers assigned to Maine and Houston are from the traffic division, and therefore all should be wearing the white hats, not the dark blue hat that this officer is wearing. And so that makes me curious. Why is a patrolman standing where a traffic cop should be standing? And the traffic cops are not called patrolmen, or they're not in the radio patrol division, which is what the different hats signify. Radio patrol division versus traffic division. And these are all in the traffic division, so they should all have white hats. And here I have circled the other two low-level officers assigned to this intersection here in the Bronson slide. The one in the raincoat is known to be Officer Denham, and the other is one of the other two, presumably assigned to the intersection. Now, not circled, and to the left of that, you can see a white-hatted police officer. That's Sergeant Harkness. And then a little further off on the right, there's another white-hatted police officer who dresses the same way Inspector Sawyer dresses, but Inspector Sawyer isn't supposed to be here yet, so I don't know who that is. And there are some other blue hats here that aren't policemen. Perhaps there was a Maytag repairman convention in Dallas on that weekend, or probably it's just some other blue-collar workers who happen to wear blue hats that look a bit like police hats. So looking back at the assignments here, we know the raincoat cop is Denham, and so the other two are supposed to be either Fox or Lewis. And so our patrolman is either Fox or Lewis, or he's standing where Fox or Lewis is supposed to be. Now, let's make things a little murkier here. In the radio traffic, I didn't note the time here. This looks like it's probably around 15 minutes or so after the president was shot. We have Patrolman C.E. Lewis calling in. And this is the same name, and there's only one C.E. Lewis on the force, as one of the guys who's supposed to be stationed at Main and Houston as a traffic cop. So perhaps this suggests the possibility that Lewis had transferred to the patrol division prior to the assassination. But the trouble with this is, if that's him, then why is he calling in? A traffic cop standing at the intersection isn't going to have a radio, and he's calling in to say he's out downtown. So if this is the same officer, it means that after he ran to the scene of the assassination, just a few minutes later, he's out at the police station, which doesn't sound quite right. And another problem with this is his call number is 223. 223 happens to be the call number of C.T. Walker, who is one of the policemen present at the arrest of Oswald. Here in this photograph coming out of the Texas Theater, he's the guy wearing the white hat on the left. So why does Patrolman Lewis have C.T. Walker's call number? And why, if he was stationed at Main and Houston, is he out downtown just a few minutes later, when one would think that if he was already at Elm and Houston, he would stay there? It doesn't make any sense, does it? Now, I think the most likely explanation for this is that, or the partial explanation anyway, is that C.T. Walker was, when he said out downtown, he meant he was out at Elm and Houston, and that for whatever reason, C.E. Lewis's name is put on this transmission, but I can't see why that would happen. Now, I have another transcript where it's identified as C.T. Walker, and if someone using that number should be identified as C.T. Walker. But for reasons that don't seem clear to me, or less than clear, they don't seem credible. I mean, I don't see... You can make a mistake writing down a name, but C.T. Walker is an accident investigator in the traffic division, and it just seems like an odd confusion to make, as if the person who made it, for some reason, had C.E. Lewis on his mind. And we have an apparent reference to this mystery patrolman. I should say radio patrolman, because I think traffic cops are called patrolmen too. But the guy in the blue hat, in Officer J.M. Smith, he was assigned to Elm and Houston, one of the two Smiths there, and he was being questioned about the time when the ambulance arrived for the guy with the epileptic fit. which wasn't really an epileptic fit. But Liebler says, were there any other officers there in connection with this fellow that had the epileptic fit? Yes, there was one more. He was a radio patrolman. Do you remember his name? I don't remember his name. I swear I was trying to think of it before this even. He was a radio patrolman? You mean he was driving a motorcycle or had a car? No, he was assigned, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was assigned to Main and Houston, and he was down there with the man when he arrived at the scene. And he was down there with the man probably when I arrived at the scene. So it sounds as if the first time Smith noticed the radio patrolman was when the ambulance was there, or when the epileptic was having his fit. Well, it's a shame he doesn't remember his name, because apparently he's not the traffic officer. Apparently he's not. He's probably standing in for Lewis, is my guess, though it could be the other one, Fox. I don't know. So that's about as far as I've been able to take it in identifying this guy. There are two officers, according to the assignment sheet, that this could be, but those two officers are in the traffic division, and this officer is dressed as if he is not in the traffic division. So I don't think it's one of those two officers. I think J.M. Smith knew his name, but couldn't remember it for the Warren Commission. And I guess I have enough time to say why I'm so interested beyond the fact that it's an unsolved mystery in this case, who he is. If you followed my videos closely, you know that I think that J.D. Tippit was actually shot in Dealey Plaza, and that a radio patrolman by the name of R.C. Nelson took J.D. Tippit's car from Dealey Plaza. So I'm curious as to whether or not this radio patrolman might be R.C. Nelson. However, the best picture of him comes from the Hughes film, and he looks very odd in the Hughes film in that he doesn't move a muscle. The camera is not on him for very long, but I'm very suspicious that the image in the Hughes film might be a pasted-in image and not really be the guy who's actually standing there. So attempting to identify him from that image, even though it is the best image, might not be fruitful if somebody edited in a different person. But my suspicion is that R.C. Nelson was standing there, and I don't see any way I can prove that.